Y Combinator is the startup accelerator. They back companies like Stripe, Airbnb, DoorDash, billion-dollar companies that change the world. But here's the twist though, even YC gets it wrong sometimes. They've been backing hundreds of marketplaces, and most of them of course look super promising at first, but they still failed. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down 3 YC-backed companies that looked super promising to begin with, but still didn't make it. We'll be looking at what they were building, what went wrong, and most importantly, what we can learn if you're like me, building your own marketplace businesses. So the first one we'll take a look at is Ridejoy, which was in the 2011 summer batch for YC, and basically it was a long distance carpooling marketplace that shut down then in 2013, so they only existed for about 2 years. So if you're European, the best way to understand what they were doing is basically an alternative to BlaBlaCar. So it's basically BlaBlaCar just in the US. So if you have a car and you're going somewhere on a trip, you can then list your extra seats and then earn some money that way. And initially everybody loved Ridejoy. It was community driven, and they then went on to raise another 1.3 million from Freestyle Capital on top of the money that they already got from YC, of course. And actually I love the way that they launched their marketplace, because there was apparently something called burningmanrides.com. Unfortunately that site does not exist anymore, as you can see here, but there was basically a site helping people get to and back from the Burning Man festival that is in Nevada every year, I believe. So basically they launched their service together with this Burning Man event, which is a huge event every year, right? So that is always a really good way to launch your marketplace. So if you can connect your marketplace launch to some event that is happening, that is awesome, because that will give you a lot of attention, a lot of free attention probably, right? So they were really smart. But 2 years later, unfortunately, that dream was over and they decided to shut down Ridejoy. And actually the one founder, Jason Shen, he wrote an awesome blog post, a very honest blog post about the whole experience that I can really recommend you reading, and I will link to it in the description below. But basically they ran into 2 major issues. So one was a liquidity issue. So initially when they launched together with this Burning Man event, everything was fine. Buyers and sellers could find each other there were no issues. So but then when they then went nationwide, they had liquidity issues. So people looking for rides could not find people that were able to offer rides and so on, right? And that is always a huge problem with marketplaces, if the one side can't find the other side, basically, right? So they probably launched nationwide maybe a little bit too fast. Maybe they should have just moved on to one more city and then go slowly in a slower pace, basically, right? And another issue they ran into was actually a what they call an incentives problem, right? So basically they were saying that a driver going full-time only working for Ridejoy, there were just not enough incentive for him to actually do that, because they would not be able to earn that much. Person with a car could only earn 3,000 a month, assuming he was driving 25 days a month and spending $40 on gas per drive. So earning 3,000 a month is not like a huge incentive compared to just having a normal job, for instance. And that is actually a super interesting thing that he's pointing out here, Jason Chen, because it's always best to find a market where you can give quite a big, well, as big as possible incentive to the seller in order for them to do whatever you want them to do on your marketplace. So if we compare this to Airbnb, for instance, if you have an apartment and you're renting it out on Airbnb, you have quite a big monetary incentive to do that, because sometimes you can earn like $100, $200, $300 per night, depending on where you have your apartment, of course, in the world. But there's quite a big monetary incentive to actually do that on Airbnb. So it's always best to try and find a market where you can actually give the seller side quite a big incentive. Next up, let's take a look at Tutorspree, which was a Winter 11 YC backed company, and they were basically a tutoring marketplace. So basically if you wanted to find a tutor to help you with getting better at whatever, you could find that on that marketplace. And by the way, they did shut down in 2013, but it looks like another company, Ycent, then bought their domain name later on. And initially everything went really well for Tutorspree, at least in terms of raising capital, you could say. So they raised 1 million from Sequoia, and in total they raised $1.8 million. And it was interesting because in the very beginning, they were only offering this kind of old-fashioned one-on-one in-person tutoring. So that's also what you can see here. If you go to Web Archive, you can see that where do lessons take place? Lessons take place in students' homes, libraries, dorm rooms, or at coffee shops. So that's interesting, right? So they did not offer online tutoring, at least to begin with. And this is what their website looked like initially, at least according to Web Archive. And it's a little bit tricky to actually find out exactly why they decided to close down the company. But the founders, they wrote this blog post just when they closed down the company, and they're writing about the constantly shifting challenges. So it is known that there was a lot of competition, and maybe they were just not good enough at basically building a loyal user base, but also at adapting to the changing environment. So maybe they should have gone online a little bit faster than they did. That could be one of the reasons. And they are also, by the way, mentioning that they had envisioned something else for the company than what it turned out to be. So that's why they decided to close down the company. Last but not least, let's take a look at Convoy, which was in the 2015 YC batch. And that was basically a marketplace for connecting shippers directly with truckers. So they were basically trying to disrupt the traditional trucking industry by using technology to bypass the traditional way of doing it by using a broker as a middleman. And I think you could say that they were the Uber for freights. And these guys, they raised a lot of money, and as you can see here, they also had a team of more than 1,000 people. So this was a big company, right? And as you can see here on GeekWire, I think they raised in total more than $900 million, which is insane, right? So they were also valued at 3.8 billion when they were at their peak. They did also have a lot of famous investors like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, and they did also have revenue. So as you see here, they were expecting to surpass 1 billion in annual revenue in 2022. So it's not like they didn't have any revenue going on here. This marketplace was working in terms of revenue. But by October 2023, it was basically game over for Convoy. And the CEO, he sent out this memo, which is reported here on GeekWire. And in it, you can see that he's basically stating that the logistics market had completely changed due to COVID, and it was also not as easy to get more funding as it was before COVID. So those were the main reasons why they decided to shut down immediately. So what we can basically learn from the Convoy story is that no matter how many millions or hundreds of millions of dollars you raised in funding, it's still more important, first of all, to find product market fit, and then secondly, focus on profitability over revenue, because if a downturn in the market suddenly hits you, you will be screwed, just like Convoy, if you have only been focusing on generating revenue and you are not profitable, because it will suddenly be much more difficult to get more funding, right? So profitability over only focusing on revenue is the key here. So yeah, overall, being part of the best accelerator in the world doesn't guarantee success. Ridejoy had traction, Tutorspree had a mission, and Convoy had hundreds of millions in dollars in funding, but they still all had to shut down in the end. And from my side, I also thought that this was a great idea when I first started it, which was my spare desk, an idea for turning your home into a co-working space, but I also had to basically stop working on that. If you are interested in building your own marketplace, then you should go and check out Speedbuild Marketplace. That is basically a boilerplate for quickly building an MVP so that you can quickly get it out there to see if you can get both sides of your marketplace idea to interact, because that is always the hard part of building marketplaces. And that is it for this one, guys. I hope you liked it. Always just reach out to me if you have any questions. You are very welcome to send me emails, and if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and maybe also subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. See you. Bye bye.